Hey everybody, it's Party Elite, and today I want to go over some crucial beginner tips for Mutant Year Zero Road to Eden. With it releasing today, many of you are about to be hit with the harsh reality of this amazing and often challenging game. With the hopes of helping you along the way, here are 10 essential beginner tips to get you started. Use fast travel wisely. Mutant Year Zero is divided into zones on a world map, and at any point of time when exploring in real time, you can open up the world map, and panning around, you'll find that with the click of a button, you can fast travel to any destination you've already entered. This can be used in a few ways. For one, if you're running around a region and you, say, collect enough scrap to buy more medkits or find weapon upgrades that could be helpful in an upcoming engagement you just scouted, you can fast travel all the way back to the Ark, make your upgrades and purchases as needed, and then fast travel right back to the zone you were in, ready to go. Keep in mind, though, that you will be brought to the entry point of the zone in question. Another way to use this to your advantage is at the end of a zone. If you've cleared an area out and are right next to the entrance to the next area, go through to the next area before going back to the Ark or in another direction. This especially applies to areas that you might not want to go to yet. If you're right next to the entrance of a branching path, go ahead and enter the area you have no intention of going down just yet first. Then double back and pursue your initial plans. At least when you reach the end of your initial path, you can fast travel to the beginning of the other path without wasting too much time backtracking. Go where the game tells you not to, especially in the early game. Just because a zone is marked well above your level and has a red skull over its name doesn't mean there isn't good scrap or loot to be had easily. Very early in the game, you can find the Axe Warrior armor in a region well beyond your level. You just have to travel to the Iron Serpent, and before you know it, this crate will greet you with its contents. A little further on, you can get yourself a pretty sweet gun, the Rambino, by exploring another region, the Lair of the Horned Devil, that's also well above your level. It's all the way to the northeast. Yes, it can be pretty scary, but if you're careful and wary, you won't get spotted, you won't trigger an engagement, and you'll walk away with some great gear, especially for the early game. Plus, you'll be able to grab a lot more scrap and artifacts a lot sooner than you're expected to, giving you access to more gear and mods. And as I mentioned earlier, you'll also make it easier to fast travel to these locations afterward. Keep your eyes peeled. Whether you're in these high danger zones or just ambling about, keep your eyes peeled at all times. Lurking in the shadows off in the distance, you'll often see the enemy before the game notifies you of their presence. Use that information to plot your approach without compromising an ideal position. When enemies talk to each other, you'll see speech bubbles above their heads. These speech bubbles can give you some intel regarding enemy placement and numbers. See how many bubbles go back and forth, see the elevation changes, and hear the voices. They'll tell you the types of enemies and how many you're facing. Now, they might not all speak, but at least you're able to start getting an idea of what you're up against. And finally, when roaming around, make sure to turn your flashlight on to highlight lootable items. Scrap is often very hard to identify, but the flashlight makes them nice and shiny no matter what elevation differences there might be or no matter what they might be hiding behind. And trust me, you're going to want to collect as much scrap as possible. Stealth is king. Do not underestimate the value of stealth in this game. While you can absolutely go loud whenever you want, and you might be able to survive, you're going to find yourself bruised and beaten more often than not. Take your time. Sneak around with your flashlight off. See enemy patrols, learn enemy patrols, look for opportunities where you can pick them off one at a time, even if it's a fraction of a second of a chance. As long as you completely kill an enemy using only silenced weapons outside the viewing radius of another enemy, you won't trigger an engagement. If you are patient, you'll find most enemies end up isolated at one point or another outside of where the game is teaching you how battle works or a situation where combat is inevitable. Spend time to scout an area. More often than not, the most obvious answer isn't the right answer. The right answer is lurking in a far-off corner waiting to be killed off. Like here, where I turn a lower chance of a successful hit from the bottom of these stairs to a definite kill by getting to the top of the stairs from a different angle. Arm each of your party members with at least one silenced weapon. Borman starts with none, Dux has his crossbow, and Selma starts with a suppressed pistol when you find her. There's a silenced needle gun at the Fallen Angel waiting to be found, and you should get it as soon as possible to equip Borman. Between this and leveling your silenced weapons up properly, you're going to find yourself offing ghouls without triggering an engagement 9 out of 10 times. This is going to save you a lot of heartache and rage. Stealth is king, queen, jack, and ace in this game.
Sweet!
Move before first shots. You'll often find yourself triggering an ambush just outside optimal ranges. A 75% chance to hit is a 25% chance to miss. Basic math. And that basic math can be the difference between stealth and combat. Keep in mind that as you trigger your ambush, you're still able to move before you shoot, just like a regular tactical turn. So, move before your first shots. Get your sneaky stalkers closer to get that 75% up to 100%. With appropriate speccing and equipment, your crit chances will be high enough by the time you need them to be, and you'll see some great damage output with every shot. So make sure everybody moves as needed to get their hit chances up to 100%. Yes, you'll get spotted, but if the only enemy spotting you is the one you're about to kill, it doesn't matter. And if you're really good, you'll be able to remain hidden despite moving, and that will give you a nice buff to your crit chances as well. When I say move, I mean more than the physical act of moving between tiles, by the way. This includes the use of abilities, like Duck's sprouting wings to take to the air, which will give him height advantages. On which note,
Gotcha.
Learn your characters. Every character has something that makes them unique. Without spoiling much, Bormin is a bit of a tank. He can up his health often and early, and then he can charge into enemies to knock them down for a couple of turns. And he can run and gun, which means he can sprint a longer distance and still use an extra action to, for example, fire. Dux is quite the silent killer, a bit of a sniper who's able to gain height by using his natural mutations, the moth wings that can be unlocked down the line. Selma, meanwhile, has easy access to the high ground with 2 potential mutations to help her. She's also great at holding people in place with Tree Hugger, but that can only be used when you're actually in contact with the ground, so a bit of a catch-22 with her skill tree. These are the characters we've seen the most of, so I'm not going to spoil any of the others, but my point is this: learn what makes each character tick and set them up for success. For example, Dux and Selma have easy access to high ground, so give them helmets that give buffs when they've got the high ground. Bormin is likely to be going toe-to-toe, so give him the beefier armor or some fireproof gear. Each of your characters will be predisposed to certain approaches. Take advantage of that, or you're going to be seeing reduced hit chances, reduced crit chances, and reduced successes. Split up often. Moving as a group is great when you're in the open without any enemies in sight. It's great for quickly moving from point to point near an enemy encampment as well, but it's a good idea to split up often. Like I said earlier, each character is built for a certain approach. Every piece of equipment or mod is ideally used with a different approach. If you're pairing party members with equipment appropriately, you should see the natural conclusions of how people should be split up, and where they should be placed. Be wary also of incoming grenades and molotovs that have an area of effect, and just because one of your characters has to sacrifice their hidden trait to move and shoot when triggering an ambush doesn't mean they all do. Only characters that are in the same direction will be spotted right away. Any sneaking from around the bend or coming in from behind will maintain the hidden trait, ensuring that they can still get the buff to their crit chances. And sometimes you'll really want to split the group up, like here where I just sent Dux and Selma forward to eliminate potential threats, allowing me to come back and gang up on the final beefier enemy with all my strength. Dress appropriately. I cannot stress this enough. Dress for the job and bring the right tools. When you scout ahead, you should be able to ascertain what you're up against, fast travel to the Ark if necessary, gear up as needed, and then move in. For example, if there's high ground advantage to be had, make sure to wear the right hats. If there's an enemy pyro, maybe wear some fireproof vests. If there are mechanical enemies, maybe bring EMP grenades or the appropriate mods on your weapons. Even characters should be swapped out to deal with specific situations in certain cases. Always gear up for the job appropriately, otherwise you're setting yourself up for failure. And remember, you can change gear on the fly, swapping things around between members depending on their current position. So, if you need to pass grenades or guns or armor around when stealthing about, you absolutely can. Prioritize targets. This one should go without saying, but for posterity's sake, I want to cover it. Pick your targets wisely. Priority 1 are enemies that can be taken out without breaking stealth. Priority 2 is also enemies that can be taken out without breaking stealth. Seriously, make sure you've really looked around the map to take them all out first. When the alarms trigger and an engagement begins, they all become aware and they can all dive in from all angles. Only then, as priority 3, should you try to shut down the likes of shamans or shamans, however you'd like to pronounce it, or the Mother Zone dogs and other equivalents that will call in more ghouls or dogs to provide some support. After that, it all becomes kind of muddled, but I believe it's better to thin the enemy out quicker rather than try to kill a more heavy-duty enemy first. They'll all be dealing out damage just the same, and the longer you let the grunts live, the more damage you're likely to take per turn. If you're able to take a pyro out when he's surrounded by your enemies, that's an excellent idea. When they die, they blow up, and they set friends and foes alight, causing fire damage to people in the area, and for some turns over time. And as far as I'm concerned, you should leave medbots for last. They will chase after fallen allies as their first move, and will ignore your party if there's somebody to heal. Healing will take one full turn though, so you can target the medbot as it's healing. Ideally, you'll use something like the Gaper that will hit the medbot with some knockback, forcing it away from the fallen ally and preventing it from completing the heal action. This will get the foolish machine stuck in a loop, allowing you to kill it while using the fallen ally as bait. Works every time. When it comes to prioritizing targets, make sure you're using the appropriate equipment in the appropriate situations as well. Something that penetrates armor or causes knockback might be wasted on a grunt that might be just as easily taken care of by a low-tier pistol. Stay stocked on medkits. They're not cheap, but they're worth every piece of scrap they cost, and you'll often find them littered around the world. Medkits are literally lifesavers, but there is an ideal way to buy and use them. For one, you'll want to get this discount as quickly as possible. Use the first ancient artifact you find to purchase the discount at Iridia's shop. She's the one who sells you everything from guns to grenades to medkits. The savings will add up fast. Apart from that, try your best to avoid using medkits in combat. There are 3 ways to use medkits. One is when it's a party member's turn, where it can be used to heal oneself or a nearby ally. Another is also when it's a party member's turn, and this is specifically to revive a fallen friend, replenishing some of their hit points. If at all possible, these 2 uses should be avoided at all costs. Unless you're facing total party kill or the certain death of an ally, try to ride an engagement to the end. Why? Simply because using a medkit outside of combat will always bring health back up to full. You'll still have to use one per member, but at least you're guaranteed to end up with a full health bar no matter the current status. And it's important to point out at this stage, I believe, that if a party is down but not out, i.e. they're bleeding out, they're not going to die unless they finish bleeding out, so you have some time before things get desperate. I'd also advise getting this upgrade as soon as possible. It increases the value of using medkits in combat, and that becomes more helpful later on, but hold out for as long as you can. But yes, remember to stay stocked on medkits. At least 3 medkits at all times is how I like to play, as long as it's possible. It's the best use of money in my opinion. Owning a fancier gun isn't useful if the person who's holding it is dead. I hope you guys enjoyed these 10 essential tips for Mutant Year Zero, and I hope they help you as you start your adventures in the zone. I'm having a ton of fun with the game, and if you haven't picked it up yet, consider using the affiliate link in the description and under the eye at the top right corner of the screen to support the channel as you buy. There's also a 10% discount with the promo code PARTYELITE that you can copy from the description below too. As always, make sure you subscribe for more strategy gaming content, including Let's Plays, reviews, previews, and more. And a massive thanks to all of my patrons and channel members for supporting the channel on a monthly basis. And a massive thanks, of course, to you for watching. Until next time, cheers.